Hey guys, welcome to another MapleStory video, and I have the annual 5 best unfunded classes returning for you guys. More balance changes, more class reworks, more people asking me to explain MapleStory classes like the League of Legends champions, so here it is. Now, just to refresh your memory on what unfunded means, a lot of people make the assumption that unfunded means weak, as in low level, no equipment, etc, etc. No, that is not what unfunded means. An unfunded player is a player who has not the means and or wherewithal, that means money by the way, to feasibly continue their progression. This usually means free-to-play players, but there are still some F2Ps that can be funded if they know what to do. You could also be super rich in the game and be considered unfunded, and most of the time beginner players just so happen to be unfunded because they're new to the game, so I guess they're interchangeable. The way I'll be grading these classes will be the same as the ones in previous years. We have damage, wave clear, burst or how much damage you can do very quickly, defense, mobility, utility, difficulty, and their strong points, early, mid, late, or end game. By the way, for reference, early game is anywhere between 0 to 25k stat, mid game is 25 to 45k, late game is 45 to 70, and then end game is anywhere beyond 70k stat. There are a lot of other indicators that we could use to determine what stage of the game you're at, but because stat is the most effective way to look at it, we're just going with that. Now, before you assume that 25k stat being considered early game is ridiculous, because I do understand that about 80% of all players are in that bracket, it's what's expected out of the player when taking on the natural difficulty scaling of bosses. I've had comments where people said that they consider themselves endgame because they can solo Chaos Root Abyss and Hard Magnus. Those bosses are not the hardest bosses anymore. There are plenty others 30, 40, 50 times harder. So just getting that clarification out of the way, I know it sounds ridiculous that to reach endgame you have to be like 70k stat or more, but that's just kind of how it is. The classes in this video are geared towards players who don't expect to get very far in progression but still want to play, a relatively strong class even if they don't have the equipment for that. Those of you who always ask which class is the best for unfunded players, I'm gonna level with you. There's a reason why you want to pick the class that you find more enjoyable and fun than whatever is strong. So many players, they say play whatever you find fun. And I know it's hard to break from that notion that the more damage you can do, the more fun the class is. I don't care how much damage means to you. There have been so many players I've worked with and seen who dove immediately into a super top tier class and they found some enjoyment out of it, but then over time they just gave up on it completely and switched to a different class just because it was either difficult to play, boring, or just whatever, it wasn't their type. If you're going to play MapleStory, you have to play a class you can see yourself on for like years. For example, I picked Dual Blade, which is by all means a pretty solid, respectable class, but compared to others, they're like C tier, maybe B tier at best. There's a lot of stuff Dual Blade does well, but there's also a lot of stuff that it sucks at, but I don't care because I played the class for like 9 years. There's a lot more to MapleStory than just doing a lot of damage. So why am I making this video? It's just to get your feet wet. You're more than welcome to try these classes out, but I'm just trying to introduce it to you. It may not fit your style. In fact, some of the most powerful classes in the game are some of the least popular because they have such an odd playstyle or theme. So let's cut right to the chase with the honorable mentions. Evan and Aaron are like two sides of a coin. Whenever one is strong, the other is too, and vice versa. And they've always held strong when it comes to consistency, especially after their reworks. A far cry in performance than when they used to be, back in like 2015, but both classes, they're really fun to play and have a lot going for them. Their greatest aspects shine from their self-sustainability since they're very independent, and both are good at maintaining equal parts burst damage and consistent damage. However, I think they're better suited as mid to late game than early, and do suffer from a lack of good equipment for unfunded players. Blaster is also another powerhouse with one of the best endgame performances a player can ask for, at the expense of terrible mechanical requirements. You need metal robotic fingers to play this class. I did voice my praise about Blaster for years. They've always been top tier and they probably will always be top tier, but the problem with Blaster is that their execution isn't really that effective unless doing bosses. They suffer from a very clunky playstyle outside of it and the highest skill curve in the game. But as a beginner, this is not a good starting class, maybe later on once you've understood the game a bit more. Demon Slayer would actually have been on this list if not for any of the other 5 classes. They were actually in my top 5 last year because they got great tools, good damage, and just an all-around solid class, but falls short just barely of being in the top 5. That being said, if you want to go Demon Slayer, by all means go for it. I do say they're way stronger than their Demon Avenger counterpart. Ladder isn't doing a very good job in GMS. Cannoneers is the last honorable mention on this list. He's kind of like Demon Slayer, where he has a ton of good stuff to make him a viable contender for a long-term main. Quite fun to play, a solid founding on both damage and mob clearing, but both of them are not quite good enough to earn him a spot in the big leagues. A very serviceable pirate with a pet monkey if you enjoy that, and just an all-around solid class though. The other ones not mentioned in this video are not bad by any means, but for example, the reason why I didn't list like any thieves or archers except for one is purely because of the fact that those two class types are better suited for funded players, or they just suck. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the main part of the video, and in no particular order, here we go. Heroes. They earned their well-deserved spot on the list in 2018 for their ridiculously overpowered burst damage and damage output, and they're gonna earn their spot again. They've always been super powerful, but after receiving their third fit job skill and some more buffs, heroes have been able to up their wave clear a bit more and their damage much further. I think I might have overestimated their non-burst damage since they do still suffer from a lack of speed outside of their hypers and fit job skills, but very few can come close to their burst damage, which means all the difference past mid to late game. In terms of how they apply for beginners and unfunded players alike, they're extremely cost efficient. The amount of work you have to put into a hero compared to some other classes is laughable. You can get so much mileage out of this class for very little input. Heroes have incredible base final damage, which means any upgrades you make is amplified further by their passive bonuses. Other than that though, they come with high armor penetration, which is a valuable stat to have against enemies with strong defense. They are great boss killers because of it. Like every warrior, heroes come with natural resilience, and they're marginally tankier than the likes of thieves, archers, and mages, but in comparison to other classes, don't expect heroes to last very long. At least if we look at their sister classes like Paladin and Dark Knight, who can tank much better. They have all of their eggs placed into damage, they do that one job, but that one job is done very well. The only thing I don't personally like about Hero is how one-dimensional it is. They hit like a truck, all things considered, but you basically only have like 2 active keys to press, and that's about it. A kind of linear, somewhat dull playstyle, but if you want a classic warrior experience, you can't go wrong with Hero. Powerful as all hell bruiser class, great for new players. If you're looking for something a bit more snazzy though, don't expect too much out of him. I bet you guys weren't expecting Ice Lightning Mage to be in this video, but hear me out on this one. Ice Lightning Mages may not excel in anything too particularly special, but they don't have to. Of all the mages in the game, I place IL in the smack middle. The one aspect they shine in is wave clear though, some of the best area control abilities post fit job, and they're one of the best classes when it comes to destroying an entire map in seconds. Their damage isn't anything to scoff at either though, a good combination of damage, magical attack, and critical damage scaling. They get also complemented by the fact that Explorer mages get the incredible Infinity skill. You can do surprisingly high burst damage, much higher than you would expect a speed mage to do. I do not consider them to match Fire Poison mages anywhere close when it comes to burst, but you also have to acknowledge that Ice Lightning mages have a very good Swiss Army knife style kit. They're certainly a lot more serviceable outside of bosses than heroes are as the jack of all trades type mage. Having a firm hold on the mid to late game, they may suck a tiny bit early on until they get fit job skills, but you really can't sell Ice Lightning short until then anyway. Other bonuses they have come in their great utility. True to their name, IL mages can immobilize many targets with their bind and AoE slows, along with debuffing enemies, defense and magic defense, and their bind being an invincibility frame skill. Very versatile skill in many aspects. It's hard to think of any glaring weakness that can't be circumvented, but that being said, don't expect this class to earn any medals in excellence. A good class for unfunded players, but if you're thinking of going to endgame, you should probably pick something else. Then again, if you're watching this video, I don't think you're in that target demographic. Pathfinder, the newest class to come out in GMS and demanding respect for her class type, that is for sure. I've been talking about how overloaded her kit is for months now. Top tier damage output, top tier wave clear, top tier burst damage, amazing mobility, and not as bad of a defense and utility rating as you might think. Pathfinder is a simple yet powerful class with a combo-based system that functions best weaving skills together for massive damage, so they have a little bit of a skill curve in their kit. They come with incredibly high critical damage, critical hit rate, base damage output, and while they're not the fastest class ever, they're so self-sufficient it's ridiculous. Fit Job adds even more to their already extensive kit, a huge nuke of an ability, more wave clear, and even a damage blocking shield that combined with your hyper skill effectively counts as an 8-second invincibility frame. Combine this with their powerful Cardinal and Ancient Force skills and you have a fun class that can dish out huge damage. As of right now, I consider Pathfinder to be the best unfunded class in the game. Not only because they're strong early and mid game, but even late to end game, they're good in all stages of the game. Nexon does plan to nerf them in the future, but just because their kit is just too good in terms of concept, it probably won't even matter. It's actually very rare to find a class that has top tier mobbing and bossing and be a fun class without really any stupid gimmick. A noticeable skill floor, but not too difficult to get the hang of, so you can master them very quickly. As for their utility, while they do come with a damage reducing shield, there's very little else in their kit, a pure solo class. But if you don't care about support, you can't really find a better archer than Pathfinder. Hands down, exceptional. Arc is another one of the new classes to come out, and I gotta say Nexon is deadass shooting the power creep high, very high on these classes. I know I've given Arc a ton of S's, but that's because he really is that good. High base damage, some of the best wave clear in the game, especially when reaching 5th job. All of their DPS attacks are AoE, so they're great against almost any boss. Modest defense, but like, you know, he's a pirate, you can't really expect him to be too tanky. Mobility? Insane. Half of their skills are mobility skills that, what do you know, they're good for mobbing as well, they have it all. But not only do Arcs have good offense in their kit, their utility is surprisingly ridiculous. Their charge drive abilities all grant buffs to you and your entire party. Here's the list. Movement speed, power stance, attack power, critical rate, attack speed, evasion, total damage, boss damage, armor penetration. They give almost every single combat stat in the entire freaking game to your whole party. Not to mention their burst damage can be kind of ridiculous if you switch to Spectre mode. And while innately they aren't the most durable, they do have a lot of lifesteal in their kit, which does compensate for their skills costing HP instead of MP most of the time. Other than that, they have a lot of passive damage scaling buffs that give crit rate, armor penetration, attack, boss damage, critical damage, final damage, abnormal status, resistance, elemental resistance, max HP, max MP, damage reduction. They get so much free stuff. However, with all that being said, they're much harder to play. Arguably the hardest class of this list to master, but the reason why I put this class on the list is because they just have so much stuff that if you can overcome that hurdle, you have a top tier class. Arcs are pretty respectable during the early and mid game, but they're at their best towards the late and end game. So if you're an unfunded player who does want to put the effort, you got a kick-ass pirate right here. So, the previous pirate was this emo edgelord multiple personality disorder guy. Now let's flip it 180 and talk about an anime magical girl who kills you with bubbles, hammers, and space explosions. Sound good? Angelic Buster is the reigning queen right now. Not only is she one of the best unfunded classes in the game, she is straight up the strongest class in the game right now. Her damage? Game breaking. Amazing wave clear, not as much burst damage as some other classes, but who cares? Once again, rather modest defense, good mobility though with one of the best flash jumps in the game, and strong enemy debuffing potential. What makes Angelic Buster shine the most is that she has the highest base skill damage of any class. Half of her attacks have base percentages rising over 1000, with some of them going as high as 4000%. With the V-Matrix boost nodes, you're looking at skills with a base damage of 2000% or more. She hits like a mother trucking freight train. And just like Arc, she comes overloaded with a bunch of passive bonuses, easily reaching over 100% critical damage as a pirate, even if you don't have a lot of stuff. A ton of her attacks have huge range, she has like 5 full map attacks, she's really freaking strong. But while Angelic Buster can dish it out, she's not very good at taking it. Pirates have pretty decent resilience, but Angelic Buster has the same durability as an archer, so don't expect her to tank too much. But that really isn't a shortcoming, that's a detriment to her class. She does her job so well. She earns the title of having the highest damage output in MapleStory for the past 2 years. So why don't many people play her? Well, I mean, because she's like what would happen if Hatsune Miku got her hair dyed pink and then cosplayed as Mega Man. Not really the kind of aesthetic too many people click to. Anyway though, that wraps up for this video. Hope it was informative for you guys. Just to remember, ultimately in the end, I cannot stress this enough. If none of these 5 classes look fun to you, then don't play them. Who cares if these classes are super powerful? If you don't like their playstyle, you don't have to. In fact, Arc and Angelic Buster, 2 of the best unfunded and funded classes in the game, have some of the lowest play rates in all of MapleStory. It just comes down to your preference. If you enjoyed this video, a rating would be much appreciated, and feel free to watch my other MapleStory videos I have on my channel. At the time this video is being released, I'll have made a transition to move over to Cube World. So those of you who only joined for the MapleStory content, I gotta say it was a privilege to be able to entertain you during the spring and summer, but I will be heading over to a different game. Maybe in the future, if I do feel nostalgic for the game, I'll come back. But right now, that's up in the air. I'm gonna be moving over to Cube World. Been super excited for this game. I mean, if you wanna try, you can play Cube World yourself. It's pretty fun. Trust me, it's not like Minecraft. I know it looks like Minecraft, but there's a lot more to it. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll hopefully continue seeing you guys again in future videos. But until then, take care.